All right, guys, here's what we're going to do today. We've been talking about elements, compounds, mixtures, and so today we're going to focus on elements. And so we're going to take the periodic table. You should have received a periodic table just like this from me in class, or you have one emailed to you. And so there are certain elements on the periodic table that you have to know in chemistry. Now, you don't have to know them all. These are the most common. Now, there are up to over 100 if you take all of these elements out here, and some of these are man-made elements. We'll deal with that later in the year. But over 100 elements, we don't have to know them all. What I'm going to do is I'm literally going to walk you through the elements that you need to know for this class. So here's what I want you to do. You need to have your periodic table. You need to have a highlighter and probably a marker or a pen for the very beginning. I'm going to walk through the names of all the different elements, and I'm going to show you exactly the ones you have to know for class. The very first thing you need to do is take your periodic table, and by the way, if I get a hold of you, ahead of you, pause the video, catch up to me, and then start again. There is a stair step that runs down the periodic table that runs right here, and the very first thing that you want to do for yourself to make your life easier later is take a marker or a pen and make that staircase really dark. And if you look, there's a really thin line there already, okay? And so you want to highlight that. That's going to be very important throughout the year, but right now I'm not going to deal with that. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with the elements. We're going to start in the top column. Now the elements go element 1, element 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and we go from left to right. If I highlight it, you are responsible for it. If I skip it, you do not have to know it. Okay? You're going to end up having to know the symbol and the name. First, we're going to start with hydrogen. Hydrogen's the lightest of elements on the periodic table. If you know anything about history, the Hindenburg was made as a blimp, and they put hydrogen in it. The problem with it is it's very, very flammable. When they tried to land that blimp, when it hit the tower, it caught on fire, and the people that were riding in the blimp, many of them were scalded to death. They were burned up. Hydrogen is very, very, very flammable. It will cause an explosion. Jumping over to the other side of the periodic table is helium, He. Okay? Now, most of you have had a balloon before with helium, and a helium balloon is lighter than air, but it's not flammable. That's why we started using balloons with helium in them. The next one is lithium. Now, not all of them have everyday uses, so if I don't tell you, it's just skip, but I try to give you a little bit of background on them if I can. Beryllium is the next element that you have to know. Beryllium. Boron. And I'm going to go ahead and stop right here for a minute. Now, what I'm going to write on this periodic table with this pencil, you do not need to write, but it's a reminder. Notice I have two elements that look to be very close to one another, beryllium and boron. Just a reminder, you've learned this in middle school before, but just a reminder, whenever you have an element symbol, the first letter is always capitalized. Always. So that one's boron. If it has two letters in it, the second one is always lowercase. That's why beryllium is capital B, little e. Now, you will have it wrong every single time if you do something like that. Even if you write it smaller, that's not lowercase. Okay? And the reason that we have to be careful with those is if you had one like this. S, I'm just going to point to it for a minute, is sulfur. Si is silicone. If you wrote Si like that, that's actually sulfur and iodine, which is right there. And so you have to make sure that as you go along, if it has two letters, the second letter is lowercase. So in the case of this one, if I wanted to make silicone, it would be S and then a little I. If I wanted sulfur, it's just an S, and it would be just that. Now again, you don't have to write those right now. That's just a reminder, but elements and symbols. Okay? So we were talking about boron. Okay, little joke for you. This is what some of your classes do at school. They bore on. Carbon. Carbon is known as the element of life. Everything that is living is made of carbon compounds. Carbohydrates, fats, proteins, lipids, they all have carbon-based compounds. Nitrogen. Nitrogen. Most of the gas, 70% of the air that you and I breathe is nitrogen. We breathe it in, we breathe it out. We don't need it. The next gas is oxygen. Oxygen, that is the gas of life. We have to breathe oxygen or we die. If you don't get enough oxygen, you can die. Now, the human body, what's interesting, you can't breathe pure oxygen. Pure oxygen, that's what happens when somebody hyperventilates. they start getting too much oxygen and your body can't handle that. It has to be the right proportions. Fluorine is the next element, fluorine. Now notice it's not fluoride. Fluoride, when you use fluoride in toothpaste, it's a compound that has fluorine in it. This is called fluorine. Now I'm going to help you real quick so that you get it right. When we have our quiz or test here in a few days on these elements that we have to know, fluorine, notice it's F-L-U-O-R, fluorine. It's not F-L-O-U. F-L-O-U-R is flour, like you cook with flour. This is fluorine. Notice how it's spelled, F-L-U-O-R-I-N-E. Okay, again, you're not having to write these, I'm just being helpful. Neon is the next element. Neon, when you run electricity through it, it glows. Everybody's seen a neon sign. Moving over to the next row. This is the first one that is really sort of weird. This one is called sodium. Now many of you know from middle school that Na, some people like salt. I know it's salt. Well, actually salt has sodium in it, but it's called sodium chloride. And so we're talking about just sodium. And here's what happened. S was already sulfur on the periodic table. And so what they ended up doing is when they found this element in nature, they already had S for sulfur because these weren't found in order. We've put them in order, but they had to come up with something else. And so what they referred back to was its original Greek name. And this one happened to be called, and you don't have to know this, but just to help you where it comes from, this one was actually called natrium. Natrium, found in nature. It was pretty significantly found in natrium, and so Na became sodium. So its original name in Greek was, they're either Greek or Latin, was natrium, and so when they put it on the periodic table it became sodium, and so they used the old symbol so you can see where the Na comes from. You do not have to know the Greek or Latin words. I'm just showing you. That's why some of them, these have some really, really weird symbols. The next one is magnesium. Many of you have seen magnesium if you've seen a road flare. There'll be an accident out on the highway, and the highway department or the police have flares sitting out so that people don't have an accident there again, and they're really, really bright. Magnesium's not actually that red color. Magnesium is actually a silver color. And when you start magnesium on fire, here's what's really weird. It's a metal. And when it catches on fire, it is so hot that even if you dumped it in, put it into a bucket of water, it won't go out. A magnesium fire is so hot that if you stuck it under water, it will take the H2O and split that H2O and steal the oxygen to keep burning. Some of you guys or girls, if you like camping, magnesium is sometimes what you'll see. They'll have a block of magnesium. If you've ever watched some of these survival shows and they're trying to make fire, they'll have a block and they're scraping across it with a knife and it sparks to spark a fire. That's magnesium. As you scrape across it, it makes a spark and you can actually make a campfire from it. Aluminum is the next one. Everyone's seen aluminum foil. You know what's really interesting about this one is when you put it into the oven like in a baked potato, the metal gets really hot. But as soon as you pull that baked potato out and you pull that aluminum foil off, you can actually wad it up in your hands and it's not hot at all. It's not like a normal metal. You drive a car and which is made of steel and iron, and you turn that car off and come back out 30 minutes later and touch the engine, it's still hot. So all these metals are really different from one another. Silicone is this one. The most common use of silicone in the world is computer chips, a multi-billion-dollar industry. What's really weird about silicone is you can make it into a computer chip, and using computer language of zeros and ones, which are off and on, you can actually put all kinds of information on this. It'll hold a charge and let go of a charge. That's what off and on means. You can give it electricity or take the electricity off. Really interesting. Phosphorus. And I'm just telling you, you guys here are going to see some videos here in a couple of days. I can't have phosphorus in school. It's so dangerous. Phosphorus reacts with air and it catches on fire, pure phosphorus. Phosphorus is actually found on the end of the really big matchsticks, the big red tip matchsticks, and so when you strike it, it's the phosphorus that catches, and it catches the wood on fire, and then you have a match. So I can't even buy this for school. It's that dangerous. Okay? Sulfur is the next one. Sulfur is a yellow powder. Okay, sulfur has a lot of different uses. There are certain parts. We have a town in Texas called Sulphur Springs. There's so much sulfur in the soil there, when you drive through, you can smell it. Sulfur smells like rotten eggs. Okay, that's what it naturally smells like, and it's a yellow powder. Some people that go camping, they're going to be out in the woods. They'll dust sulfur on their shoes to keep ticks and fleas away, so you don't have to worry about those in your tent or in your clothes. Chlorine is the next one. Every person that's ever swam in a pool, you know what chlorine's like. Okay, it burns your eyes after a while. Why is it in the water? To kill the bacteria and algae so the water doesn't turn green. You have to have chlorine. So this one's fluorine, this one's chlorine. Argon. Argon is the next element. Argon doesn't have an everyday use. They do have argon welders, but many of you probably don't have that much of a reference to it. The next one's another weird one. This one is potassium. You're really going to have to work on this one. Is symbol K. Here's a silly way to remember it, and I'll try to give you silly ways to remember it. Many of you know that potassium, one of the biggest sources of potassium is bananas, yeah. But a banana, it has lots. Now, banana is not all potassium. It has other things. It has a high quantity in there. That's why you would take it, runners take it so they don't get cramps, okay, when they're running. Potassium, let's see, there's a cereal, and a lot of people with their cereals will put fruit in it, and there's a cereal called Special K. Potassium, that's an easy way to remember it. The next one's calcium. All of us know that we have to have calcium for our bones and our teeth. Scandium is the next element. These next two, I'm going to go ahead, these next three, I'm going to go ahead and highlight them in. Scandium, titanium, and vanadium. Scandium, titanium, and vanadium. Very lightweight metals. More and more things are being made out of these metals. They're now making baseball bats that have scandium and titanium in it. They're very durable, but they're very, very light. Okay, and so you'll find people that race bicycles, for example, they're made out of these three metals because they're so light, but they're durable. They can hold the weight of a person, but they're very, very durable. Tennis rackets, golf clubs, when you swing a golf club that's made with these, it has a whipping motion, so the club whips through and hits the ball and makes it go further. Chromium is the next element. Have you ever seen those 1950 cars that have the really big silver bumpers? They're made of chromium. Manganese is the next one. Manganese. Now this one and this one get mixed up a lot. This is called magnesium and this one is manganese. Now look at the symbols. Manganese, the N comes first in the name. Magnesium, Mg. That's how you can tell them apart. Iron is the next one, Fe. There's an old movie from the 1980s called Ferris Bueller's Day Off. The word ferrous is what iron was originally called, ferrous. And so when it became iron, they used Fe for its symbol. Cobalt is Co. Nickel. Are nickels made of nickel? Yes, they are. Copper, Cu. Over the years, done it a long time. People get these two mixed up. Even though copper is spelled C-O-P-P-E-R, that's cobalt. Cobalt, copper. Zinc. In the United States, we make pennies out of copper, but the price of copper has gone up so much that the U.S. government has started making them out of zinc in the middle, and they coat the outside with copper. It's a lot cheaper. Zinc is found a lot in the Earth's atmosphere, so it's not near as expensive. Gallium. Germanium. Here's a fun fact. Gallium right here, this metal, when you put this metal in your hand, if you had a piece of it, it melts in your hand. Your body temperature is warmer than what it needs to melt. And so I had a student in my youth group a long time ago at church, and their family bought for them a piece of gallium. They're a big science person. And so when they got it in the jar at Christmas, there was a little bitty square. It looked like dice you would roll, a little one. When you put it in your hand, it would just melt in your hand. When you dump it off on the table, it would stop. Your body temperature is warmer than this needs. It melts at your body temperature. You know what, something else that melts at your body temperature is chocolate. That's why when you throw chocolate in your mouth, it immediately starts to melt. Probably never thought of that before. This one's called germanium, probably named after a country, Germany, yeah. Arsenic. Arsenic is poisonous to humans. It's poisonous now. It's not like you can go find arsenic, but it is very, very poisonous. Anybody's a theater person, there's an old theater show called Arsenic and Lace, and it is about somebody killing somebody with arsenic. You can't really get it, but that's what the idea is. Arsenic's poisonous. Selenium, doesn't have an everyday use for you and I. Bromine, krypton. Now, a lot of people look at this and say, Superman, and that's true, but what is krypton? You may or may not know this. Krypton is the planet he's from. The rock that makes him lose his strength is called kryptonite. So in the old comics, that's where they got the name of it, from the element on the periodic table. Rubidium is the next one. Rubidium. Strontium. And then we start skipping some. Okay? Molybdenum. So I skipped those three. Those are not very common, used in first year chemistry, so I'm not going to make you know them. Sliding over. Palladium. Silver. Now I'm going to go ahead and go here so that you can see the difference. Silver and gold have a very close symbol. Now I'm going to have to keep going here in a minute, but I want to talk about these real quick. Silver and gold. These are hard to keep straight. So again, I try to help you in a really silly way. Silver is Ag, comes from the Greek. Gold is Au, comes from the Greek, their names. People miss these all the time, so I'm going to give you a silly way to remember it. It's going to be really silly, but here it is. Girls, these days, lots and lots of people girls wear a lot of jewelry that's silver. It's cheaper, it looks really, really nice. Gold, it looks really nice, but it's a lot more expensive. If you were wearing a whole lot of silver, someone may say, hey, G, got any silver? But if you're wearing gold, somebody might want to rob you and say, hey, you, give me your gold. So that's an easy way. Now, I know that's really silly, but AU is gold. Okay, silver and gold. Make sure you get those straight. Cadmium, tin, like a tin can. Tin is SN. That one's a hard one. You got to really work on learning that one. Antimony, SB. Tellurium. I think this is why girls wear perfume. Tellurium. Iodine. Have you ever seen somebody after they had major surgery in which they had maybe a cut on their arm? The skin will sometimes be a brownish color or a purplish color. Iodine, they put that on there to kill all the bacteria because bacteria are killed very easily with iodine. Xenon, it's not xenon, it's called xenon. Next line, cesium. Barium. Silly joke you'll see on one of the worksheets here in a couple of days. Barium, that's what you do with dead people. Okay, that's what you do with dead people. Moving along, tungsten. Platinum. All right, girls, platinum is more expensive than gold. Okay? If a guy buys you a platinum ring, he spent way more money than gold because gold is expensive, but platinum is even more. There's very little platinum in the Earth's surface, so the price goes up. It's called supply and demand. Mercury, like from a mercury thermometer. Mercury is Hg, or the planet Mercury, Hg. Lead, Pb, comes from the word plumbus. Isn't that a weird word? But if you know anything about plumbing, they make lead pipes. They have pipes that go under your house to the sewage are made of lead. Plumbus, if you look at that word, it looks like plumber. Bismuth, probably most of you have tasted this one. Bismuth is found in Pepto-Bismol. Okay, that pink liquid, that really crazy taste is actually bismuth compound in it, and you can taste it. Polonium. Astatine, radon. This one's really weird. It's a radioactive gas. Man, how do you control that? It's radioactive, it's a gas, it's hard. You got to keep it in a container or it gets away. Francium, radium, and then we really start skipping around. Way down here at the bottom is uranium and plutonium. Uranium, like the planet Uranus, and plutonium, like Pluto. Okay. Now you'll notice there's a whole lot of them that I didn't highlight, and the reason is though they're not used very much. It doesn't mean that sometime in class I won't talk about Einsteinium or I won't talk about Nobelium. It's just we don't use it very much, so you're not responsible for it. These are the most common elements that you have to know. Now, it's really important that you catch what I'm about to tell you, because I'm going to give you a grade on doing this. You're going to need to make flashcards, and when I mean you need to know them, I don't mean I have my periodic table and I can use it whenever I want to. You can use it as a reference, but you're really going to you're going to get a grade on making flashcards. Okay? And so in the assignment you're going to see, this is basically a 3x5 card. Here's all I want you to do. You don't want to use a marker because you can see through, but what you want to do is something like this. And some people, they want tiny flashcards, so I'll make a tiny flashcard real quick. Just take that thing, tear it in half, or I could just take a piece of paper and tear squares, doesn't matter. But here's what you're going to do. The first element is hydrogen, H, capital H, and then write the name on the back. Hydrogen. Next element, helium, He. Helium. Okay? And you're going to have between 55 and 60 of these elements here. You need to make flashcards, stack of flashcards. And what we're going to do is these are the ones that you have to know. So in a couple of days, you're going to have to know the first 30 for a quiz. And for that quiz, what's going to be happening is you're going to see a question that says H, and you have to type in hydrogen. Or it may say hydrogen and you type in capital H. So if they give you He, you would type helium. Or if they gave you this. So you got to know, so you need to make sure you have all of these in flashcards. I'll even give you a grade, an easy 100. And you'll find the deadline written in Canvas, so make sure you follow the instructions. But you're going to have a day where you're going to make flashcards. Okay? And you're going to upload a picture of them all laid out like a deck of cards. And so what you're literally going to do for me is after you've made all your flashcards, you're going to lay them out like this kind of thing, like you would do a deck of cards, and you're going to snap a picture of it. Now, from that point on, I will have you start learning them. And when I tell you have to learn them, it's very, very important to make sure you learn them. You have them memorized. I know the names and the symbols. Do I have to know all the ones that are not highlighted? No. I just have to know the ones that are highlighted. And not only are you going to use them, we're going to use them all year long. It's very important. So we're going to have 2 quizzes. I'm going to quiz you over the first 30, and then a couple of days later I'm going to quiz you over all of them. And then you're going to have a test grade on all the elements and symbols. It's going to be a timed quiz. You're only going to have a few minutes. So you have to know them quickly. All right, so you need to start practicing. Keep your eye on Canvas for your deadlines. Keep your eye on Canvas on making sure I need to have flashcards by this date. I have a quiz number 1 on the first 30 on this date. I have a quiz over all of them on this date, and then I have a test grade on nothing but the symbols. Now, if I'm giving you a test on nothing but this, elements and symbols, you know it's important. So start working on these things. Start making your flashcards. Keep track of what's going on. You guys are doing great. Keep up the good work.